I thought it would be fun to build an Ionic wind motor while explaining some solutions I used and the basic principles behind it. And to my surprise, even the first iteration, being not perfect, turned out to be good enough. I must say there are lots of videos about Ionic wind on YouTube, but for some reason none featuring an ion wind motor, so I decided to fill that gap. So to build an Ionic motor we have to start with the main phenomenon, which makes this device possible – ion wind. Discussing the whole physics behind would take a while, but in one figure this is what's happening. High voltage is applied between two electrodes, creating a strong electric field. That field accelerates any charged particles in it according to Coulomb's law, both ions and electrons, but in opposite directions. And a lot of those accelerated particles essentially create the wind. So those tiny arcs you see, it's an air ionization process, meaning that this device in a way a particle accelerator. Quite cool, right? But how do those ions and electrons appear in the air in the first place? While watching this video, you're breathing ionized air created by cosmic rays and UV photons from the sun. The concentration of ions in the air is about several hundred per cubic centimeter. Not much, but it's enough to have only one near high voltage electrode to start the so-called electron avalanche. So that single accelerated electron collides with a neutral air atom, knocking out from it another electron and ionizing the atom. This process repeats like an avalanche, creating more and more ions with each electron collision, and these ions are repelled from the high voltage electrode, generating the wind. Anyway, the easiest way to create an electron avalanche and ion wind at home is by using high voltage power sources, which you can easily buy online. Thank you, era of global shipping and the internet. So I bought not one but two different ones, a 400 kV and 1 million volts version. But here is the fun part. The only difference between them is the length. Million volts one is shallow inside, as you can see. Scam or good marketing? Honestly, I'm starting to confuse these two things in a modern world. But for such a low price per module, I forgive them. Also, they lied about the voltage. There's no way there is 400 kilovolts or even 1 million volts, which even sounds ridiculous. How do I know? Well, 400 kilovolts taste a little different, more spicy I would say. But jokes aside, 400 kilovolts wouldn't even form between these contacts, because such a small air gap wouldn't withstand that insane voltage. It would break down at a much lower value, limiting the actual voltage. Just for example, I'm holding it a few centimeters away and there is no arc. 400 kilovolts wouldn't care about a few centimeters of air, it would punch right through. And when I put them closer, there is an arc at a distance of 1 centimeter. And now the magic trick. To penetrate 1 centimeter of air, the voltage must be roughly 30 kilovolts. So the real output of this thing is probably 30 kilovolts max. So I have built an extremely simple setup in here, with a metal saw acting as one electrode and some aluminum foil as the other, representing the ground. After applying constant voltage between electrodes, we see arcs coming from one. That's a corona discharge, which creates ion wind. And when I increase the input voltage, the output voltage increases, and so does the wind strength. To increase the voltage further, I need to increase the distance between electrodes to avoid an arc, because the arc does not contribute to the wind. But I'm gonna do it differently. I know I will be using 3.7 volt battery as a power supply in the final design. So I just need to find the distance at which it does not arc when supplied with 3.7 volts. And I think I've approximately found it. Now I just need to carefully measure it. Also, you might wonder, why am I using a saw as one electrode instead of the same rounded aluminum contact? That's because corona discharge prefers pointy edges, forming more easily at their tips rather than on smooth, rounded surfaces. So now when we understand how to generate ion wind using high voltage, it is important not to waste any torque it generates. Because remember, we want to use it to spin a rotor. The problem is that any moving object experiences friction, which is quite annoying. It limits top speed and reduces efficiency. But there is a solution. A ball bearing, which allows objects to spin on a shaft with much lower losses. God bless Germans for figuring out how to make this. In particular, to rotate objects vertically, thrust bearings are used. But there is a problem with all bearings. They still experience friction, which depends on the mass of the spinning object. The heavier the object is, the higher the friction. There are ways to reduce friction, of course. For example, ceramic bearings have a much lower friction coefficient, reducing losses. For a comparison, here I have a regular steel bearing and a ceramic one. When I spin them with exactly the same force using my highly calibrated right-hand thumb, you can see that the ceramic one at least keeps spinning. In general, the friction coefficient of ceramic bearings is 2 to 10 times lower. But even ceramic bearings suck compared to magnetic bearings. You know those Japanese high-speed trains that can reach insane speeds? magnetic levitation and almost no friction in there. So how am I going to build a magnetic bearing not being Japanese? By simply putting two permanent magnets on top of each other. But oh no, what a surprise! Two magnets alone aren't stable at all. To fix that, in active magnetic bearings, the upper magnet would be actively balanced by electromagnets positioned in a circle around it. But we're not gonna do that. Too much work for a small efficiency boost. Instead, I'm building a passive magnetic bearing, where horizontal displacement force is compensated mechanically. A much simpler and cheaper solution that anyone can recreate. The auxiliary ball bearings will only be used to reduce friction from the upper parts spinning. This setup is much better than using a thrust bearing in terms of friction, because the platform's entire mass rests on a magnet rather than a ball bearing. So we have the wind, we have the magnetic bearing, and the moment has come to turn on the epic music and fast forward through the assembly. By the way, the parts you see in this video were made by the video sponsor, PCBWay. Using their 3D printing and CNC machining services at a reasonable price, you can produce parts of any size, complexity and from different materials. For example, you can 3D print parts from various plastics and in different colors, but also from metals such as aluminum, steel and even titanium. All of high quality and very fast. Link for the PCBWay is in the description. So here I have two magnets glued inside 3D printed parts to act as a magnetic bearing. Two more ceramic bearings to reduce the friction of a spinning rotor. The rotor also has cutouts to adjust electrodes spacing and prevent arcs. And most important, batteries and high voltage supplies, which are glued to the inner pillar. Each supply powers two blades. I made a magnetic switch to turn it on and off, because this thing bites with high voltage when touched. And when it's spinning, it's not that easy to stop it. Let's finally turn it on. No way, it works! I mean, of course it works, after such high-level engineering. At first I connected only two blades to test if it worked, then added two more. But what about the speed? Not bad, could be better, but still good enough. So with just two electrodes connected, top speed reached 180 RPM. By the way, did you notice that strange noise while it was spinning? That was two bearings slipping around the rod instead of rotating properly, which is not good. I fixed it by wrapping some tape around the rod to slightly increase its diameter and keep the bearing snug. Can you hear it now? No, much better that way. I also powered two other electrodes and, as expected, the RPM has increased. With 4 poles it now reaches 240 RPM. After experimenting with setup a bit more, I noticed something unusual. In many cases the corona discharge was not forming where it should. Instead of starting at the edges of the saw and moving towards the negative electrode, it was appearing on the screw heads that held the electrodes. And then it hit me. Not literally, but figuratively. I'm an idiot. As you might know, aluminum is a good conductor, but when exposed to the air it oxidizes almost instantly. And that thin oxide layer protects aluminum from corrosion, which is a good side. But the downside is that aluminum oxide is a dielectric. It does not conduct electricity. Here is a simple test with a multimeter. If I gently touch the foil with the probes, there is no short circuit, but if I press hard enough, the probes pierce the oxide layer and make contact with the metal underneath. So yeah, I replaced the aluminum foil with copper and redid the experiments. And yes, copper works much better in this case. The corona discharge now forms exactly where it should, at the tips of the saw teeth, and goes to negative electrode, creating nice violet shining. After that I swapped out all aluminum electrodes in the rotor for copper ones. Let's see if it spins any faster. And yes, it does. A little bit, now reaching 300 RPM. You know, there are definitely ways to improve this further. The weight could be reduced, the electrodes could be made lighter and other optimizations, but to be honest, it really depends on the application, and after thinking about it for a while, I could not come up with anything practical, except as a unique aesthetic looking table decoration to light up some noble gas tubes. That might actually look pretty cool. Anyway, if you have an idea how to improve it or where it can be used, write it down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and check my other videos, they're extremely cool. Love you, bye.